Should we start?
I think we can start.
Yeah.
Well, this will be a smaller group, but I think that's good.
That's okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you
Um,
hear me or not?
Yep.
yes.
I'll mute myself so that I'm not too loud.
Great. So here we are. We're gonna first start talking about the materials reconsideration policy. I think in light of what's happening and what's been happening and how close it's coming, I think are there a few SELCO libraries that have had challenges?
Yeah, small ones.
Yeah, not major,
Nothing,
but
yeah.
it's still a really good time. I don't know, have any of you done any reworking of your policy or reviewing?
We did ours last year. We redid it. I actually took a lot of notes from Duluth policy. I thought their collection development policy was really good. Now I feel like I still need to go back and look at it again, but we haven't had any materials challenges, only challenges to programs.
Oh.
So I actually wrote a programming policy this last
Oh,
year.
man.
I was like, I'll just do a whole bunch of policy.
What were the challenges?
Pride and related. Yeah, it was, I mean, it wasn't much, but it's always like when you're not used to it, it's very, very loud when one person comes forward, but they didn't get all the way to the board or anything, it stopped with me. So it was fine, but it was a good conversation to have with the board. So.
Natalie, do you mind sharing that policy, the programming policy? That'd be great.
I'll put it into the chat.
We did the same thing kind of in Austin. We double checked the policy that we have. We kind of looked through it and I talked to the board about it, and we talked about how a lot of the things that I've seen talks about how if your librarians are prepared to have that initial conversation, sometimes they can stop it there, and if not, it goes to the director. And I had the same thing. We had a drag queen story time 2 summers ago, and I had someone call and we just discussed it, and that seemed to be enough for her. She just wanted to kind of make her point. And but then talking to the board about, then if it gets to the next level, here's what your options are and here's how this might look. And but I think it's a great idea to have a program one too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I'm glad you mentioned it though, because we have one of just about how we create programs or why or what the behind it, but it makes a lot of sense. Especially given like the drag queen story time. I mean, we had a drag show, we've had drag shows for the last 2 years. And it's in Lake City, and it's an interesting place to have it, I think, but they've been really successful, and they're in support of a LGBTQ youth group in town. And so it's a fundraiser, and they've been well attended. And that this year we had some protesters. It was pretty minor, but it was still something to think about, But then you think about, oh, I'd love to have a drag queen story time at the library. I think it would be so much fun. I think that the kids would love it. And, do you want to open that door? Which is, you never know. I think depends on, I don't know that my city administrator would be happy if I did it, because it's something that draws attention potentially negatively, but
Old white guys.
old white guys, yeah. That's the issue, yes. But, I think it's important. So we just redid ours in the last 6 months because it was just a really inadequate policy for the things that are happening right now. And I think it was helpful for me because there were things I wasn't thinking about as far as, and then Alice from Plainview also shared her policy with me, and hers included a revision to their board meeting procedures and how the length of time anybody is allowed for the public forums portion of the meeting and what that looks like, which I thought, I didn't even think about that.
That's important.
Yeah, and I realized, or I learned that my city has and I don't remember if it's 2 minutes or 9 minutes, that everybody gets to speak for X amount of time. 9 seems long, I think.
I hope it's not 9.
I think it's 2. My husband was on the
Usually 2.
school board and I think they allow 9, if possible, under certain circumstances. I don't know where I found the 9, but I think it's 2. At any rate, it's a citywide number, which was nice that we didn't have to create it for our own reasons, but it was just really helpful also because I think, especially in light of everything, I was thinking defensively, where there are some really like proactive things that aren't related to the current political climate and the current, that's this kind of thing. And like, why do we have this policy? Why do we think about what we're putting in our libraries? And I just thought that was it was really good for me to go through this process and just learn, like, have a better base for conversations with patrons. I had a conversation the other day. A patron came in and it was about the White Lotus. We have a DVD of the season 1 of the White Lotus, and she was just offended.
Oh, for crying out loud.
It was terrible. And I'm not a prude. I watch foreign movies all the time. And I thought, okay, great. Thank you for sharing. But, and that she just wanted to be heard, I guess. But I found also that, for those of you who haven't done it, the process by which someone can lodge a complaint or request consideration formally. And then, my city attorney was really the most helpful in this. I also looked at, the ALA has a toolkit for selection and materials reconsideration policy. And there are different things to think about, and it's really helpful. But the few things that I liked and the rationale behind it was that there are steps to this. So first you talk to staff. If you don't like that, then you formally request something with the director. And if that's not, and then they form a little committee to talk to somebody or to talk about it and make a decision. And then that's not, so that people feel like they do have some recourse if they don't get the answer they want, but and that there's levels that they can proceed through. Just on their behalf, they can feel at least that it was a decision that was thoughtful and intentional, even if it's not the answer that they want. And so I don't know if any of your libraries have had challenges. You're shaking your head up there.
Just a couple of weeks ago, well, probably a couple months ago, and I talked to Steve about it, Carson. I had a lady come in and there was a book on the shelf, and she kind of thought, oh, this looks interesting. And she picked it up and she read the summary, and she comes over and she said, do you think people are going to read this shit? And yeah. Our library is not woke. And I said, I don't know if people are going to read it. I said, I don't know if anybody's going to read any book I buy. Really, I don't, you never know what people are going to read. I said, I just bought the book. If people read it, they'll read it. If they don't want to, they don't have to. And she apologized the next day. She's like, it wasn't directed at you, but she's like, I don't know that kind of material is appropriate. And what I kind of thought was the book was husband material. I don't know if you've seen that. I've not read it yet myself, but what was kind of funny is, yeah. The funny thing was that she didn't notice the lesbian book beside it. And then I'm like, you're the one who checks out all my smutty romance books. So, I don't know. So I'm like, well, and but I did have a board book for an infant, a child's board book, and a parent's like, I think there's a political agenda in this book. And
Can't hear you, Natalie.
I'm like, well, okay.
You're just laughing.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it hasn't gone any further than that. And as far as I know, they haven't sent anything to the board, about those books. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
La Crescent had a board book as well, not a formal challenge, but just a verbal complaint, and it was bye-bye binary. So yeah, it was just one person saying that they thought it was inappropriate, but since then the book has actually circulated several times. So I think our Storytime families are happy that it's there. So
yeah, the board book I had was just called an autumn walk in the city, or a winter walk in the city. One of those books, spring walk in the city. There's like 4 of them, and it shows all kinds of cultures and different things.
Such an agenda.
And I thought, well, if you were in New York City, or if you were in Chicago, Minneapolis, you would see all these different ethnicities. And we don't see that down here in Little Leroy. So
I've been so tempted to post a big poster that quote that says a great library has something to offend everyone, but my library board didn't let me do that.
You should have just done it anyway, Julie, and just asked for forgiveness.
They said maybe poking the bear is not the best option right now.
That's true too.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Have any of you had anybody come? So similar to the people who come to the school board about whatever, and there's kind of a playbook, and there's always people, and it's kind of, okay, let's do this because this will get people riled up and wasting time. And then if that doesn't work, then we're going to move to this. And there's places that you can find these things. And I think a lot of the book challenges that are formal and made that way are coming from the same playbook.
Their Facebook groups for the
Mhm.
playbook. Yeah.
And we have a pretty obnoxious and vocal group in Lake City. I haven't heard from them yet, thank goodness, but has anybody had any experience with something like that? Because I think that one's the scariest.
Yeah.
Because it drains your resources, they're organized, it's not, these people aren't thinking of this stuff. They're getting it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like they can barely spell in the emails.
Yeah.
But they're, yeah, Karen, you have.
Yeah, so ours has been, and it's not even about, I'm sure it's related to books and materials, but it's not about books and materials. There is this ridiculous conspiracy theory that the neon lights hanging in the windows of our library are symbols for recruiting pedophiles.
Oh my.
That's a
And
new
this
one.
group continues to show, right? Continues
Because the pedophiles are so organized that they have colors.
They've infiltrated.
And
Infiltrated the library electrical system.
squiggly lines in neon from 1995 clearly recruit pedophiles.
Wow.
And these folks have actually been showing up to the city council meetings, and kudos to our city administrator and city attorney who finally made a statement that said, basically be careful what you're saying. It's fine for you to come with complaints to the city council, but making accusations of illegal activity need to be reported to the police, and that is not, the city council meeting is not a place for that to be happening. So that has kind of like tamped that down a little bit, but yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow, that one is really extravagant.
Does the sign say anything, or is it really just symbols? Or is it just, not symbols, but like squiggles?
They are literally squiggly lines. I will find the Reddit post. It's like a ridiculously old post. Yeah. It's crazy.
Wow.
I hadn't heard that one.
And it's like, you got these things in 1992 or whatever, and they've just been there, so, right?
Yeah, yes.
So evidently somebody's playing the long game, you know? Oh, wow. Ooh, crazy. Yeah, it's interesting. And have you had any, I think the most comments, I don't really even consider them complaints, come from parents for us. You know, this book had some sexual content in it. I know, and I'm like, well, that's up to, you know, you need to decide that. And I'm thinking, you send your kid in by themselves. They're picking this by themselves. Like, you're not so concerned that you'll get out of your car to come in with your kid to the library. You're just, you know, but yet you have time to put tabs on each page that has problems. I'm like, oh, but so the ALA, it's, I don't know, it's just so bizarre sometimes, but they have a document called, it's on their website in this section with the reconsideration policy.
I'll gather all these
Okay.
resources and send them out to you.
Good luck to you, because I found it and I printed it, because I thought, well, this is nice. And then promptly could not find it again on that site. So I don't know. But it's specifically directed at issues and complaints for like the teen and children's books, and like why, it's kind of talking points about why it's important and what our role is and what the parents' role is and how we can talk to patrons about that. I thought it was really helpful. And it might be helpful just to have, I was thinking mostly for staff training, you know, because sometimes I don't hear it, but the staff will say later, oh yeah, somebody came and did it. And our staff handles things well, but it's nice to have a consistent response and let them know. So, oh, there you go. Seems.
It was in the FAQs.
How did I get there? I have no idea. I don't know what I was doing. At any rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, are there any other points that I don't know if we need it, like, or any guidance when that you've come through, like, this was a great idea, I'm glad we talked about this when we were reviewing the policy, or that you want to share? Because I think there's, for me, it was just use your city attorney to the best of your ability. I mean, they're just so thorough, and that's what they're there for, you know? Does anybody else have any thoughts like, oh, I didn't realize this was going to be an important thing, but it really is, or don't forget to do this, or don't forget to think about this? No, yes, no? Do we want to continue talking about this? Are we good?
I'll add one point. This is Jess from La Crescent, just that
Yeah.
Steve had talked with me about when we redid our policy this last year. And we did have it in our policy, but I think we made the language a little more clear. So if you don't already have something about the complaint coming from someone who is eligible for a library card in your building, you may want to include that, because when you're talking about these groups that are just copying and pasting things and trying to rile people up, some of them were coming from out of state and all these different locations. So to kind of avoid that, putting that clause in there that the complainant has to be eligible for a card at your library. I don't know if they would try to go around like, well, anyone can buy a library card, but we do have that included in our policy now. I think it also says maybe resident of the area, so that helps with it as well.
I hadn't heard that one. That's smart.
I know, that is a good one. Okay, well, the next thing that is on the agenda to talk about is helping patrons, and like, where's the line for too much and not enough, or and I forget who emailed me about this, and I'm sorry, somebody did, but they had shared that there were instances where patrons had forgotten their email and password, and so they were helping them set a new one up, or just different, where you're coming in contact with their personal information, or access points to their personal information. And she's like, I just feel like we're doing too much, but I don't know what we can do about that. Have you guys found yourselves in the same situation, or do you have a hard line as far as what's happening in your library?
Even just yesterday, I had a lady come in who wanted to print an email from her phone. She needed to print a form. She couldn't remember her password, but I'm like, well, I can't set up a new, I don't feel comfortable helping somebody, especially someone who's older. You could think they're going to say, oh, that's elder abuse, or that you're trying to scam an older person. Help them set up an email with an account, because I had a lady come in a couple months ago. She wanted to apply for a job, and I'm like, well, I said, you need to have an email. She didn't have one. And I'm like, well, do I dare set up an email for, because she's almost 70, which is, she was still very spry, very with it. But I'm like, do I help you set up an email? And, those mostly is, they don't have an email, and it's like, do I or do I not help them set one up? But even just yesterday, lady needed help, and I'm like, I can't help you with your password, ma'am.
We do help setting up emails if we have time, but we do make it clear that it's if we have folks that are standing at the desk needing assistance, we will be interrupted. But I would say that's like so much of our business. Like, it goes printing and setting up emails and filling out job applications as far as at our computers. Like, that's what folks do need help with. And we've had even cases where we've helped set up emails and then had to help them get back into their email. And there's only, we try and draw that line of, there's only so much we can do. I mean, if you have the device that you set up your email with, get the password recovery, we can help you walk through those steps. But it is, I feel like our issue is definitely just having that time, and we're trying to figure out what we want to do moving forward as far as what kind of help we provide folks. We digital drop-in on a regular basis, and that model hasn't been super sustainable. Sometimes we have one person, sometimes we have 10 people, and but yeah, so we're trying to, but that is one of the number one things that people would come to digital drop-in for, is the setting up an email. So
I've had staff ask, what do we do if a patron's coming in with help for something and it's an obvious scam? Or, what is their question is kind of more about what's our liability if we're the patron is like, no, I just really need help to send all my money to this prince, and, it's sort of like, have you, our job here is not to just sort of like blindly assist with everything without it kind of interrogating the situation. Like, you're here to provide access to information, like helping people access information. So if there is information that you can provide this patron about the scam, but to not feel like you have to go to great lengths to solve every single problem that somebody asks you just because they're asking you, right? Like, there is sort of some you can say, like, here, let me show you how I know this is a scam. And so that was one case, but usually with staff, I just say, if it requires you to actually type for the patron, that's where I would probably not, right? That's when they need to either maybe bring somebody with them to the library who can assist them. But where we start, because people want you to start filling out their tax forms for them and stuff, and that's where staff start to get really uncomfortable. And so we'll help people with their setup email, we'll help people retrieve their passwords. I would say that the mobile printing option has really cut down on the password thing, because that's like the number one reason somebody comes in and doesn't know what their password is. They want to print something that's on their phone. But if it's on their phone and you can help them with it, if you do have that mobile printing option, like that cuts down on that a lot. But yeah, it's mostly the typing into your tax forms than helping people do scams and stuff. Kind of draw the line at.
I think that's where we run into issues too. It's like, we're happy to help people try and recover Google passwords if they, like Karen said, if you have your phone, we can walk you through those things. But what we run into is we have older people who come in and they can't type. Or I've even had people come in who claim to be illiterate and they want us to do everything for them. And that's really hard if they're trying to apply for a job, since so many jobs are online, even Walmart, Hormel for us. That's where you need somebody who, or you have to sit there with them because they can't figure out how to use the mouse. And we don't have the staff to do that. And that's really been hard. We do have a workforce center, so we try and send people that direction if we do run into it. Natalie, I've done that too, where I'm like, do you have anyone who can come in with you and help you with this? Or, but yeah, I think that's what we're running into post-COVID is people want us to do it all, and we can't. And so trying to figure out how do you retrain your staff and retrain the public on here's what we can do and here's what we can't do. We cannot fill all those gaps. And that's really hard.
Yeah, and go ahead. Go ahead.
We do a lot of things here in Kenyon because we're a small community and we're kind of a bit of a transient community. We have a large Section 8 housing here. A lot of people need our assistance for a lot of things. One of my staff members just last week sat down with somebody for 2 hours filling out a new housing in Hastings, and she is disabled as well, so she needed some help. And I have very patient staff and wonderful staff, and they had the time to do it. Otherwise, we ask people to make an appointment if they need more help, so we can kind of schedule our day around that as well, if it works for them. We do a lot of computer assistance or recovery password assistance, a lot of that. What we do is just verbally explain to someone that, we are going to be, if we're on their personal device, if it's a phone, trying to do that and they hand it over, it's like, okay, we try to teach them, make it a learning experience as well as much as we can, show them how to do it. Sometimes they're just not going to be able to recover that. We have a generic email that they can email things to us here, so then they can print because we don't have wireless printing. But we let them know, and then I show them that it's all deleted. You know how email is, though, you can delete, but there's maybe a paper trail somewhere yet there. But so they feel a little bit more secure. But we try to get their end result as best as we can. So we want to be as helpful as we can. And as for scams, earlier this year, I actually caught a dating scam in process, and I just felt morally I had to say something to this man. And so I did. And I told him to take those emails and go to the police with them, which is right next door. And yes, it was a very widespread scam. The police did get involved, and thank goodness he did not send off this money that was being asked of him. There is that level of privacy, but when I see something illegal happening, I need to protect my patrons as best as I can. I feel like I have a moral responsibility there. I can't tell them exactly what to do, but I can advise them that maybe you want to go talk to somebody that knows a little bit more about this. So if I see something happening like that, I will say something. So.
Yeah. We had kind of adjusted our wording on our procedures and how we help people, because we had a gentleman who was probably in his late 80s, came in, wanted to apply for a credit card online. And I was the one who happened to be helping him. And, he was very demanding and kind of rude. And so I was like, okay, well, this is what you need. I don't know what, blah, 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 and during the course of the conversation, well, they've taken my checkbooks away. They've taken all my, and I'm like, oh, I see what's happening here. So then I was like, well, you're going to need this information, and you don't have it. So you're going to need to go talk to your daughter. She's the one who can help you. But then I thought, I even let it go too far. And so we created something that we can assist patrons, here's what it says, in locating books and materials, both in the library and using the interlibrary loan systems. patrons can also receive basic instructions about how to use library resources, including our online catalog, public computers, library-owned Chromebooks, and library-related digital apps. The library will not be able to assist with matters involving a patron's private information, matters involving medical, financial, or legal documents, assistance with passwords, credit card applications, tasks on behalf of the patron, such as making telephone calls, creating documents, organizing copies, and other clerical tasks. Just to kind of, and it boils down to, I talked with our attorney about this, and she goes, if you have information and something happens, you guys are liable, whether you did anything or not. And it is a hard line, don't cross it. And I have crossed it with a couple people because I know them and they're all by themselves and they're, right, but that's like, I also say, look, I will be seeing your personal information. Is this okay with you? Or, you know, like I kind of put some things in front of it, like this is uncomfortable for me, but, or when you are entering personal information, I'm walking away or whatever, because they don't have other people in their lives, you know, that will help them. So, but it's a very nice line and it's in our manual and it's, you know, something that staff can cite when they're feeling like, you know, oh, well, I guess here's what we can do. Here's the list. So this is what the rules are. It's just helpful for them.
Do you want to share
with
that
it?
too?
Yeah, I can.
You don't have to write that.
It's an enormous document, but I can cut and paste and just share the wording with it, if that helps.
Later.
Because it's our entire policy and procedures manual for everything, so. But that came off of a situation that was just, like we could have gotten, he was gonna get himself into some trouble and, you know, and it turned out that he was starting to, like, he's now in memory care. So it was just kind of the last time he was out and about and it was tough. So anyway, it's an interesting line. And I think, you know, we're small enough. I think a lot of the smaller libraries, you know, we don't have a lot of other resources and people are comfortable there and they come and they talk to us and they want us to help them and they know us and, you know, it does make sense, but just being careful is so important. And it was anything.
I don't even have the password here yet.
Oh, well, I mean, being here, you can just join. Sorry.
So,
Oh, and I don't think I'm logged in though. I don't have.
Oh, you don't have to be logged into that.
Oh, yeah,
because
not
you're
here.
In person.
Oh, okay. Oh, so we're on that
Yep.
one. Okay.
We
Hello,
are.
everybody. I'm Michelle McCautry. Hello. I didn't know I thought I had to log in. Hi, I'm with Casson Public Library.
You're new there.
Yes, I'm brand new. I'm like,
Welcome.
I've been there 8 days.
Oh my.
So,
That's great.
and I left my briefcase in a hotel room last weekend for my during my niece's wedding.
Oh.
So, I don't even know if I have a lot of stuff on this little tablet I brought with me today, but it's so good to be here. I just love meeting with other library directors. I was a small library director for 3 different libraries, 2 in Wisconsin, Bloomer, Wisconsin, Augusta, Wisconsin. I was the library director in Wabasha, Minnesota for 7.5 years. Most recently, I was a librarian at RCTC, Rochester Community and Technical College.
We'll have to talk.
And I was there for 4 years. And I talked to you back then.
Yeah.
And then, and I also was a prison librarian for 8 years at
cool.
Jackson Correctional Institution in Black River Falls, Wisconsin. My master's in library and information sciences from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So I'm just so excited to be back in the library director stuff again. So this is fun. So I'm not going to talk much right now in this meeting because I'm just so new. But the topics we've been discussing, I've been there. And this is really interesting and it's really good to have this support. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, reach out.
Yeah.
This DRPub email at the directors is super helpful. Just any question, throw it out there, and it's really nice. It's a
It
nice
is
resource.
nice.
We don't always have a chance to talk to each other, you know, and so it's a great place to
Yeah.
ask questions and.
So I think I saw a question yesterday about, was it a bike rack or a bike? Book bike.
Yes.
And I thought, I want to know about that too.
I know. So if you happen to ask the question, somebody will ask it and then, oh, that sounds good, you know.
And instead of just trying to do it by yourself,
Right.
it's really nice to know if someone else has been through this
Right.
and has figured it out. Yeah.
Right. So yes, cool. Wonderful. So that's what we have to talk about, or that's, that was kind of what we had wanted to talk about, but are there any other things, questions or thoughts or, anything else for the group? No.
I have one,
Yeah.
if nobody else does.
Yeah.
So we've had a library assistant who's been a supervisor for years and years to train our pages and clerks. And I've been trying to transition that back kind of more to the admin in preparation for her retirement. And I wondered, I know Steve gave me some great information on like overall onboarding and bringing people in, but I wondered, does anyone have like an actual, like kind of the basics training, like here's the things you want to go through just to make sure? I mean, I've made one up, but not having really done that in the past, I'm just kind of going off things I've seen here over the years. And I didn't know if anybody has something like that, or if it's just that they're so specific to different libraries that they're really not useful to share, anything like that, or even just tips and tricks when you're bringing new people in, or especially because I'm really trying to aim at high school or college kids right now. And we do have a very diverse group. So sometimes we have kids it's a second language, or I have an adult right now who is a Spanish speaker and is kind of struggling with like the whole how to get things shelved in the right place, and just without somebody who doesn't really have that library background, and how, for some of us, it's been so ingrained for so long that it's hard to even bring it back to basics and remember that you have to make sure people understand the difference between fiction and nonfiction. Or if you start talking about Dewey, they look at you like you're speaking Chinese. So I just wondered if there was anything out there. I've already got something kind of in the works, but if anyone has anything to share, that'd be great too.
I have a couple of just Dewey training for shelving.
Yeah, and I've seen a few. I know there's a few on the Learning Lab.
Mm-hmm.
And again, again, I'm kind of getting back to like, how do people learn? And sometimes watching those videos too soon just can confuse people. So I'm almost going to be like, here's all the Learning Labs you should watch at the beginning, and then let's work for a month, and then let's watch all of these again.
That's smart.
Julie, I hadn't even thought about it before, but like you might even need something like how to shelf read.
Right. And that's kind of what we're working on. And I'm really pulling out all of my, like, I did a whole summer of shelf reading when I was in grad school, and trying to think back on how did they train me to do that. And that was Library of Congress. But I've even been looking for like, are there flashcards I can buy? Do I need to make flashcards? We've just been pulling books off the shelf and sitting with them and saying, okay, here you go. Like, put these in order. Let me watch what you're doing. But for me, I've got so many other things I should be doing too, but I feel like I need to go through it before I can create the manual to hand to someone else and say, okay, here's how we're going to do this in the future.
I'm trying to remember when they first trained me to shelf read, and this has been 40 years ago, remember, more than that. And I think all they did was they just gave me a shelf and said, here, put these in order.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, somebody else came behind me and checked, and they picked out all the ones that were wrong and turned them down. And then we talked about those. I think that was the technique 40 years ago. If there were flashcards, that would be great.
And sometimes sometimes those basic ways, we did some large print ones, and I just stuck pieces of paper in all the ones that she shelved. And then I was able to go back through and see what she did and just pull the papers out as I checked them. So, I mean, we're figuring it out. I just, any tips or tricks like that anybody has so that we're not reinventing the wheel unnecessarily would be great.
We have a shelving test that we use when we interview people that actually really helps
That'd be great.
Candidates out. I can try to, I think it's kind of HR, so I could try to snap a picture of interviews today for shelvers actually. So they, the way it's written, the instructions are very, very clear. And if you just read and follow the directions, there's no way for you to miss it. So you can tell who's not reading the directions, which is the best feeding out, but it's also a really good, simple, there's one for direction, and the instructions are very clear. So I'll snap a picture of that when I get the interviews and send it to you.
Yep, that'd be great.
Would you share that with everybody?
Sure. Yeah.
That sounds like
Lori,
a great thing.
my shelving supervisor, Lori, does outreach and shelving. She's fantastic, and she made this thing, so we'll use it forever.
Nice.
So by shelf rating, do you just mean like, how do you put the books on the shelves, like in alphabetical order according to author and then by title?
Yeah,
Or by
Brenda, so
number?
shelf
Okay.
reading for people who don't know, shelf reading is when you go to the shelf and you just look at call number label by call number label and make sure everything's in order. And if it's not, then you put it in order, and that's called shelf reading. And that's like when you started in libraries back in the dark ages, that's all you got to do until you could prove you could do that.
Well, maybe you just want to go back to the basic elementary and just do work on alphabetical
Well,
orders.
there's that.
There is really, and there's
and I'm amazed at how often you kind of have to do that, especially because the kids aren't getting it in the schools anymore.
Mhm.
I worked at an IJ Holton, the intermediate school, for a year, and I was amazed at how many kids came in. They would send them to me usually when they were in trouble, and I'd give them just a rack of shelves to keep them busy with books, and I'd be like, put them in alphabetical order, and a lot of them couldn't. So yeah, there is a little bit of that. So like Natalie's thing would kind of help at least give you a heads up of what you were getting yourself into.
Or just go to some teacher websites and look for alphabetical worksheets for third graders.
Yeah.
Oh,
But especially
you
with
don't even know
adults,
that it's specifically third graders that are going to have
Well, I
that.
would say third grade.
especially though if you're dealing with adults who are English as a second language, you don't want to be
Right.
offensive either. And that's kind of what I'm running into, is I'm trying to find that balance between, not too basic, but
There are a couple classes in the library learning lab here under the library circ desk training. And there's for shelving for the nonfiction, and then Dewey Decimal System stuff, and a couple. It does look like there's a couple classes. I'll admit, I haven't looked at them for a while myself.
And I have looked at those, Michelle, and the problem is they're almost too in depth. Like it talks about each 10 numbers in Dewey, and my shelvers don't need that. They just need to know. It doesn't really talk about how you put them in order. It talks about why Dewey Decimal is the way it is. Which is fine to know, but it's not really necessary for shelvers. For a high school shelver, they don't care that, what the 450s are versus the 870s.
I think they mostly get mixed up when they, it's 450 point something.
Right.
And like if it's just 0.1, or let's say it's 0.5, but the next book they have is 0.012, they still want to do the 0.5 first because it's fewer numbers.
Right.
But it's wrong.
It's a lot of math.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was all. Just if people have stuff to share, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll share something. Aside from just the shelving and that, I took some of the learning lab videos, broke them up into sections. And so when you start, okay, this is the section. So we talk about this, you watch that video, because otherwise it's just video. It's, you glaze over after a while. But, and then whatever they're doing in the library is practicing that. And they do that for a bit until I feel like they're comfortable. And then we go to the next thing. And then, so there's a little checklist and it talks about what do we do after that. And I can share that with you too. It seems to be all right. That the shelf reading piece is, it's just always necessary. And it's amazing. Like everybody makes mistakes all the time. We have shelf reading. Everyone has a section and they have to shelf read it every month. And I'm now just tracking okay, how many things are out of place? We're just going to track this for a while because everybody's making a mistake. So,
When you do inventory too, that's one of the reports you can run is which books were out of place.
Actually, I tend to find a lot of stuff when I do weeding every year. That's when I really find the stuff that's out of order.
Or inventory.
yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's if there's like any downtime, especially in the summer, I just have my staff do the shelf reading because that's when things tend to really get out of order because kids are taking off and then just putting them on and like, okay, we have a free hour when there's nothing going on, just go look at the shelves. And that really helps them reinforce in their minds to how they're supposed to go. So.
Well, the children's area is always like the Wild West. I mean, it's everywhere. But I think it also, like we had shelf readers coming in, volunteers, but I think it's important to be in among the books. So like you're seeing books and you're, and so we do switch sections just because I like to know what books we have. I mean, or, finding new ones. This person might like this or what, I think it's really helpful to be in the stacks and doing that ourselves.
Yeah.
That task. But it's just constant. It's like, it's never ending. It's like the laundry, and okay, start again.
Do you guys have the paint sticks for people to put in between books when they take one out? Have you, so you just get a paint stir stick from the store, and when they teach the kids how to use them, they put them in, and then they can take out the book. And if they like it, they can keep it, and if they decide they don't want it, they put it back on the shelf where the stick is.
Oh.
You did that.
Yes, they still do it. There's actually things at Demco you can get. They're kind of plasticky too. So.
Yeah, and the kids love them.
Oh yeah, the
Kids
bright
love them.
colors.
Yeah, I won some, so somebody sent them to me in the mail or the subs one time, and the kids like them.
Yeah, I know they're learning that at the elementary school library.
Yeah,
that's part of their process. We haven't done it, but we always just say, okay, if you find something and you don't want it, bring it back up to us. We'll put it away. Or we'll set a basket out for them if there's a group of kids that put it in the basket if you don't want it, But especially during summer reading, it's a madhouse. It's
Lots of baskets.
yeah, and it's just how it is, but it is helpful to have that. I feel like I had something else. Is there anything else? I feel like I had something I wanted to bring up and I feel like I wrote it down, but.
I kind of have a topic.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be worth just like creating, like a shared Google Doc in which people can list local organizations or people that are willing to provide free programming that are decent. Because we're always looking for free programs in our area, like authors trying to get off the ground, willing to come speak to people for free because they want to, sell their book. Or we actually had a really nice free program yesterday from the Span Museum. I kind of stumbled on it. We had a virtual tour that 30 of our seniors came to see, and it was excellent. So just these resources that each individual library might know of, but something that we can just share the information with others,
I'm happy to I can make a shared Google Doc and I can put it on our Running a Library website and I'll share it with everybody.
Yeah, that'd be really great.
Okay.
I have one question. We're talking about creating and probably hosting with our Chamber of Commerce a community calendar. So any events or activities or opportunities that are for the community can all be sourced in one place. And so, even if you don't know anything about, right now, there's a lot of organizations doing a lot of different things, but nobody knows about those.
Right.
And there's no real way to find them unless you specifically look at that one organization or group or whatever, or if you belong to it, but there's no common place. Has anybody done that? And anyone have tips about making it streamlined or easy or uncomplicated?
What's the budget?
0.
Oh, okay. So
I don't know. Yeah, it's low.
Northfield had wanted to do this for a really long time, and it was because I'm between library and arts and culture here. So I have like the public art program, and that sort of, there's a lot of scope creep involved in that. So I ended up being in conversations about doing a big community-wide calendar that Northfield's wanted for a very, very long time. There's so many different events going on and people don't know about it, the same story. So I had worked with a community calendar in Richmond before I moved to Richmond, Virginia. Before I moved here, I was as an end user, so the library was one of many organizations that would have their events imported into this calendar through an organization called Culture Works. And so they had every arts and culture event in the city of Richmond would sort of pull into this calendar. You could set it up so an RSS feed would just automatically, if you had a public calendar, you could just submit your RSS feed and it would automatically pull. So it was really easy for people to get a little extra attendance, and it really helped the library get some more attendance for like our art openings and stuff. So when I came here, people were interested, and I said, hey, I've worked with this calendar before. It's by a company called Localist. It looks nice. If you go to look at, I try to find ours, which I can never actually remember the URL. I think it's, let me see. The problem with it is not knowing that. Yeah, that's it. I'll put it down here so you can look at it. We ended up getting it. So I get credit / blame for this. It's not free, but it's not like, depending on what the chamber's contribution might be to that or what your budget can bear. And I think it's maybe priced by population, but I can't remember. I think our startup on it was $10,000, and I don't know if that's an annual cost. So I'd have to find out, but it looks nice. It's very, it has a really good looking weekly email, like however you get from like Eventbrite. If you've ever signed up for an event on Eventbrite, you get their weekly email of stuff in your area, and it's like, 150 miles away or whatever. This one, the Localist calendar is just going to pull from your own calendar and email that to people. So we've only had like 300 or so people actually sign up to get those emails. And so it's been a little slow for people to adopt it like anything else. But once it gets going, and I think we've had it for about 6 months, it should pick up more. But that's one kind of mid-price, but good-looking version that's really easy for the community. So it's on the admin side, it's pretty easy. You don't have to do a lot. You just approve or decline events. And that RSS feed makes it easy for the user if they don't want to actually go and like duplicate efforts by posting their events in multiple calendars. It can just kind of automatically pull from their public calendar if they have one. Sorry, that was probably more information than you wanted, but
no, it's helpful. I mean, I'm thinking we're kind of thinking of having a Google Calendar, and then having it sourced on the library website and the chamber website, but and then getting any organizations that would like to put their events on there, they can have that shared with them, but everybody's responsible for their own thing. Like, we're all grown-ups. We can do this. If you forget to put your event on, that's on you, kind of a thing. Like, I don't want to be babysitting everybody, and I don't think it should be necessary. And if people can't handle it, then don't do it. But maybe that's a dream world I'm living in. Because there's bound to be, oh, so-and-so's doing this and blah, blah, blah. But I think if we set it up with really strict guidelines, like nothing personal is on here. It must be for the community, or, just where we get to control what it's, and then teach people how to do it, and that's it. And then, and we'll have to pay attention to it a little bit. I think I like the idea of people being responsible for their own events and just putting it out there that way. So we'll see. Right now, I'm just gathering contact information that's valid. It's a big job, but I think it's like you said, people have been wanting it for years. I'm like, well, let's do a community calendar. People have wanted that for years. We've talked about it for years. Well, what? Come on, it's not rocket science. We can do this. But And no, I just think it makes sense for us to do it because people come to us for information and they ask us all the time, what's going on in the community today? Or what's going on this weekend? I'm coming for the weekend, or things like that where it makes sense. So we'll see, but I'll look into that. But
I think it's important because it ties the libraries in as that community space and that we're a part of all of that.
Right.
So I need to check and see what we've got too. I don't know. I have no idea right now what's going on with that. But I think that's important.
Well, and I think part of it is going to be training people to look there. Right.
Sure.
You know, that's the biggest thing. How do we do that? You know, just get people used to, oh, we can just check here. This is where it'll
Mhm.
hopefully it'll work well, but we'll see. It'll be interesting.
We talked about that too at SELCO, having library events all on one calendar. But it's the management of it is so overwhelming.
It is. And
That would be crazy.
I know.
my biggest thing, and I don't know enough about Google calendars, but I would like for there to be, because you know, when you click on the Google calendar, it's fine. You can see whatever's going on. But to make it look nicer for the out facing, or have a scroll of, oh, these are the events, you know.
There's more information.
Right. So I just need to do a little more learning on that. But we'll see. Anything else?
I'm going
Oh.
to share one quick thing if I can.
Yes.
So if folks who have opted into the receipt savings, the checkout slip savings thing, have you done this? Yeah. So we were really excited about that when it first, like, oh yeah, some staff member had been talking about it for years and finally we can do it. Great. So we turned it on right away, right? And within a week, we don't get a lot of book challenges, but I get this because it's a small town and I'm getting used to it. Our local independent bookseller took issue with it and decided that it was like an attack on their business. And they sent, rather than, and I am friends with the owner of this bookstore, and so I was personally kind of offended by this approach, but she went kind of nuclear with a letter to the library board before me, and a letter to the library, and a letter to the Friends. So she's one of our big kind of fundraiser supporters. When the Friends do a fundraiser, Content Books are there, right? So she had every bookseller at Content sign off on the letter. And it was like 3 pages, and it was ponderous and pretty entitled. And I mean, the whole thing was just sort of mine. I'm happy to share the letter with you because it's in the board packet, but it was in my response, which took me days to write. I mean, and then it sort of set off this avalanche of just nonsense that sucked up several weeks of my life. Dealing with the mayor was reading the board packet and took issue with, like, raised questions of a conflict of interest somehow because the bookseller had helped raise money for the library and is also on city council. And it was just this whole, totally unnecessary thing that could have been a phone call. But I just wanted to share that as like a kind of no good deed goes unpunished sort of thing. Like what I think, and the patrons loved it. They loved the checkout slip change, but the board turned on me. I mean, it was like people were individually supportive of my response, and then in the board meeting, it just all went to hell. And they all made a motion to take it off the checkout slips, and I said, fine, whatever. Yeah,
really?
So 2 weeks. Yes, it's gone. We're done.
Here.
We're out.
Oh,
I know.
I would love to see your response if I can.
I'm happy to share that.
That would be great. Let's all do that.
Don't you wish people would get that worked up about, like, actually important things?
Right.
Yes.
Like, nobody cares that there are all these other issues, but something like that people take issue with. We had a patron back, this was years ago, get bent out of shape because we showed 7 brides for 7 brothers one day. And I mean, like, literally, and this, again, it was someone I knew. And I went to him and I'm like, seriously? Like, if you need a fight, like, I will give you 6 other things that are worth fighting the library about. But that, I mean, give me a freaking break. So it is interesting what people decide to, like, I don't know, poverty, children's reading scores, hunger. Could you find something other than that? But yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry.
It came from such a place of privilege too that it was just so offensive, because I'm like, well, this is clearly not for people who can afford to shop in your precious little bookstore.
Right?
Go to hell. This is so offensive.
Wow.
But yeah, anyway, we did
It's kind
end
of a
up,
Northfield thing, though.
it's a super Northfield thing. Like, I maybe encountered the most Northfield beehive that there was. So I almost was cast out of the cool kids club, but we patched it up. So, heck yeah, I guess. It's fun. That's my story.
Excellent. That's crazy. Well, I just signed up for the calendar for Northfield,
Oh,
since I'm now living there.
yes. Now you can start, complaining at the library.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, come hang out with us. We are doing a new series, though, Get to Know Northfield, because of the same thing, right? People come to the library looking for things to do and kind of looking to find their people too. Like, there's sort of a social aspect. So we're doing Get to Know Northfield on third Thursdays. This month at 6:00 we'll be at the Guild on the 19th. And Andrea's going to be there. There will be wine and cheese and little things. So tell all your friends, come on down. It's totally free. You get a backstage tour, and Andrea's going to talk about all the different ways that you can get involved through the Guild.
Nice.
So yeah, and so we'll do this once a month and kind of introduce folks to some of the different, like, Canada Valley Makers and the Hotspot and Fiber Studio and Northfield Shares and different organizations that have something to do, something to give, or some way to connect. We'll see. There'll be, I'm hosting this one, so it'll be fun. I'm in it for the wine, so.
Yeah, I'll be there for the wine and cheese.
Right on. See you then.
Nice.
That is really a great idea. I mean, if you're a town where you're constantly, we are constantly getting new people retire to Lake City. And so we have a lot of that. Like, how do I get involved? How can I, what do I know about this? I mean, and part of the community calendar piece is that, show, oh, this is what's happening. Here's a bunch of things, so yeah, that it kind of goes hand in hand. Interesting. I like that. So I also had weeding on the list, I guess. I skipped over it. I'm sorry. Do we want to talk about weeding? Do we need to talk about weeding? Somebody had they emailed the email about questions about weeding?
Maybe.
I think it was.
I think there was.
Well, maybe we could, do we need to talk about that? Or?
Is it how to do it or why to do it, or it feels like a big
It's such a
topic?
It is a big.
Well,
We get complaints that we do it at all, but
I know.
We don't talk about our weeding. We had a situation before. Yeah.
Someone needs to make that video to We Don't Talk About Bruno, just by the way.
There's so many things we could do, you guys. So James and Alice and I were talking about, we should have a podcast where librarians write in their bizarre interactions and we just read them and talk about them. And I'm like, that would be fantastic. And I think it would be so fun.
We'd have to be anonymous though.
I know. Yeah. Well,
right? Yeah. That Reading for Life group that I do with Michael Verde, the guy who got me connected with Michael is from LA. And he and I were talking one day and I was telling him stories and he was like, oh my God. He's like, you guys need to do a TikTok and I'm like, okay, I'm too old. I don't know how that works. But it's exactly, they're like, these are the best stories ever. I'm like, yeah, but you can't do it because the people all live here and they know who you were talking about.
You could do reenactments on TikTok.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So Brigitte, you can
Yes.
get on that next and we'll share stories.
We would have to act out each other's stories. I like that.
Yeah.
We'll just swap so nobody knows which community they're actually coming from.
Oh, and we wouldn't even have to do this. One librarian wrote in,
Yeah.
this is what they said. Like, I think it could be hilarious and I want to do it so badly. I don't know. anything
Yeah,
about
amen.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think it would be fun.
For
You know,
sure. I have a
They're
list.
We could start collecting stories.
I think we should.
Should I start a doc for that?
I think so. I think so. Lovely. No, the weeding, I have one thing about weeding, just because we're smaller, so probably smaller libraries have the same situation. We are attaining or getting books at a rate that is not equal to the weeding. And when we go by numbers, we go by for the regular fiction. If they haven't gone out in 3 years, they have to go. And we're pretty, there's a pretty hard line there, but sometimes those numbers do not add up. And we're getting rid of less than we're bringing in. And so, our shelves are getting fuller and fuller. And I don't know how much more aggressive we should be.
The American Library Association says if it doesn't circulate in a year, you should weed it.
Really?
If that helps anybody.
I think it
What do you
depends
guys
on.
do? Do you do 3 or what do you do?
Well, in
depends on
my
the size.
libraries, we used 2 years as our guideline, but I was in a situation where I had ample book budget and limited space.
Yeah. You have to consider all those things, the size of your library and if you have budget for
How heavily
replacing.
your collection is used.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I feel
it
like
kinda
that's
depends
been
on your
something.
collection.
I was just going to add, I feel like that's something that with the pandemic, I'm trying to be somewhat more lenient where I can, depending on shelf space, because I am almost end to end in some of my collections. But if you were shut down for a chunk of 2020 or even part of 2021, it's like people weren't in browsing. These books haven't been seen. I don't know. So it's a little trickier on that timeline now, but I got rid of hundreds when I came in because we were end to end on so many shelves. And I just wish I could get rid of a whole aisle of Patterson books, but they're circulating and I can't.
I would be with you on that, Jess.
And Danielle Steele, you guys, she writes a book every day.
Yes, I know.
These
I
are
feel like
Danielle
that's not
Steele's,
even
they're
her.
not like series and they're easier to get rid of than the Pattersons, which are like
That's
20 and you can't get rid of number 10 if you don't get rid of all the other ones.
Another way to approach the problem might be, another one of the ALA standards is that your shelves should never be more than 75% full.
Yes.
And so if you
That's a
approach
good
it that way and go, well, by my calculations, our shelves are 95% full, figure out what's 20% of your collection, and then you can run backwards through your reports inside Horizon and say, how many books do I need to get rid of to be 20%? And you can get that number and you could approach it that way too. It really does matter when you see shelves that are only 75% full. Your collection is so much more accessible and your circulation will go up despite the fact that you have fewer books on the shelves. So that's a backdoor way of arriving at how many or which things you're good. What time of not circulating you might use to be your frame of reference there. And then there's also the option to go down the shelf and go, this one looks brown, this one looks brown, this one looks brown. And regardless of age, because some books look brown within a year.
Yeah.
But we all know that once they turn brown, the public quits checking them out. So you could use that as a criteria as well.
And then in the nonfiction, make sure you're getting updated information out of there as fast as
Right.
possible.
Right. And we've been doing I have someone who's very vigilant about that, which is great. Good. So glad. Here's my other question. Can you run a report on how many books you've withdrawn in a year period on Horizon?
I think so. I'll check.
I haven't investigated it, so it might be just a dumb question and I can figure it out, but.
I think that report you can run in there.
That
Okay.
sounds
I
right.
feel like there's.
I don't know
I feel
how
like
to
that
do it
makes sense.
anymore, but I used to run reports like that.
I'll check on it for
You
you.
just
have
go
a-
into item reporter, select your location, and for item status, put a W, and that will be all your withdrawn things currently. And they'll stay withdrawn until they're withdrawn from Horizon, your item, and that will actually be withdrawn by SELCO. So if it's fairly recent, It will be
Right.
still in there so you can count your withdrawn items.
But since they stay on
Yeah.
a certain period of time, I can run a report January 1, and that same book will be counted again, February 1. Or, I mean, I'm just thinking, how many are gone within the year period? I don't want the current status of a book. I want like the number of books that have gone from my library
In the
in the
year.
last year. Do you know what I mean?
I will check for sure.
Because I've tried that and then like, well, there's duplicate books. So then I have to do some math and some crossing out, you know what I mean? It's not super efficient to run that report.
I have a much smaller collection. I have approximately just over 16,000 items in my library, and I keep my collections pretty like I kind of know exactly how much I have in each of them. So I know exactly how much, and I'll be starting to weed here at the end of January. I always do it every year. So now I'll know, I'll run a report, see how many like items are in each collection, and then I'll know where my numbers need to be to, okay, this is how much I have to pull now. A few years ago, several years ago, my library board decided for our adult fiction, we just wanted the new stuff, regardless if it's part of a series, because that's the beautiful thing about being part of SELCO. If it's the beginning of a series from 20 years ago, we can request it and somebody else has it.
Yeah.
In that we're so small, we only keep things for 9 years. No other adult fiction. None of our adult fiction is older than 9 years. We just keep brand new stuff. So.
We also have that document called What Reports to Run When that I can share out again too.
No, that's a good one. I didn't see what I was specific.
No, I don't think it's in that one, but I'll figure it out for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm just making a note here, sorry.
Yep. Yep, and again, I'll gather all the things that people put out for this meeting and the websites and documents, and I'll send it all out to you.
Okay. Wonderful. Is there anything else that should be discussed today?
And Julie.
All right.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, I think are we done? Okay, so wonderful. Well, thanks for coming. This was nice to chat and see you. Yeah, if there's anything else, just email me and we'll get some
new topics
lists going and yeah. So, all righty.
Thanks for coming.
Have a great week.
See you later.